So your kitchen looks dated, and it's probably one of these 12 things. Hi, I'm Becky. I'm an interior design consultant, and I'm going to give you the quick fixes to get that luxury look without the luxury price tag. So jumping right in at mistake number one is going to be dated orange old oak cabinetry. Also, builder grade cabinetry can fall into this category. Really, it's cabinets that don't show enough personality in the home. So the number one easiest way that you can update the look of your kitchen, that is the most cost effective, would be to look for a can of paint in a nice sheen and refinish those cabinets. Now, if your home is particularly old and those cabinets are not in great shape and they're falling apart, you may want to consider replacing them altogether or just getting new doors put on. A lot of times what can date a kitchen more than anything is just having a dated door style. So like a partial overlay with a raised panel or a lot of ornate details, things like that that are not really so much on trend today can make your home look cheap rather than more luxury and up to date. So you have a few options for replacing cabinetry. You can visit places like IKEA, as well as local cabinet vendors in your area. Here in Utah, there is Yorktown Cabinetry, which is great. Also Mastercraft, which is great. Timberlake, more of like a national brand, that is awesome. And pretty cost effective compared to some others. But you can also just order doors rather than the full cabinet box, so do keep that in mind. Mistake number two is going to be having too much visual clutter in your kitchen or having nothing at all. So let me explain. A lot of the times when people want their kitchen to look like a model home, they go either one or two extremes. Either one, they make the countertops completely bare and they try to go for the minimalist look, but the kitchen ends up looking cold and like there's no personality. Or they go way overboard and everything is super decorative, like every foot of the kitchen perimeter, there's something there on display, mixed in with the junk that they use every day. So they were trying to go for something, but then they overshot it by about 50%. So what I would recommend is taking a critical look at your kitchen and really being honest with yourself about how much of the products you have out on the counter that actually need to be there. So if you have things that are mostly decorative, but there's no function, do you really need it? So my general rule of thumb is to make sure that the items displayed in your kitchen are 70% functional and 30% decorative. So what do I mean? I mean, if you're a coffee drinker, have your coffee pot out on the counter, but maybe next to it have a pretty pot to hold your K-cups or your sugar. If you like to keep utensils handy, make sure they're in a nice container. Make sure that looks elevated and pretty and does something to match the design of your home. But then maybe next to it or adjacent to it, have something that's a little more decorative. So you want to make sure those items that you reach for every day are ready and accessible to you, so you don't end up having both, right? You don't want to have all decor and then everything else that ends up on the counter. Make sure you have a nice blend of the two so it looks really cohesive and is very functional for your family. Mistake number three is going to be mixed matched hardware and too many mixed metals. So for example, say you've got knobs on your doors and pulls on your drawers, right? This can look nice, but if they're two completely different styles, it gives your home a really hodgepodge DIY feel, which is not luxury and not the look we're going for. Don't get me wrong, you can certainly update your home with DIY tips and tricks, but you do want to make sure that you keep the style consistent across the metals and elements that you're using. So having a hyper modern faucet and really traditional hardware is going to be a mistake. You want to make sure that those elements are consistent with each other, and then opt for 1 to 2 different tones of metal. I find that in a lot of kitchens, when you get into 3 different tones of metal, that's when it starts to get a little bit overwhelming. So just use caution and kind of take a critical look at things. So hardware is something that's so easy to change out, especially if you're already planning on refinishing cabinets or ordering new ones. You can consider elevating those hardware features for a very inexpensive price tag. You may want to even consider going for oversized hardware or custom sized to give it a more luxury custom feel, again, without breaking the bank. The next mistake is going to be a kitchen that has no personality, that doesn't really reflect you or your family. And now we did touch on this at the beginning when we talked a little bit about dated cabinetry, but here I'm specifically going to focus on the decor of the kitchen. So you want to make sure that the elements add to the kitchen rather than take away. So make sure that you've got bar stools that coordinate well with the overall color palette and the feel of your home. After all, the kitchen is the heart of the home, but it's also a huge high-use area and takes up a lot of visual real estate. So make sure that your decor pieces represent you and your family. The next mistake is going to be incorrect lighting in the kitchen. So for example, the dreaded boob light or only having recessed lights in the kitchen just again makes it feel really lifeless. It's even worse if you have multiple tones of lighting going on. So you may have some that are warm toned and some that are cool toned. You want to make sure that all of that lighting displayed in your kitchen is consistent to give it a nice ambiance. Consider adding things like pendant lighting, under cabinet lighting, or even toe kick lighting to give a halo around your kitchen when you want to have more of a moody aesthetic feel, or have the opportunity to have lots of lights if you're having a light and bright party, right? You want to make sure that the lighting in your kitchen is versatile, so it looks really nice when you're entertaining, but it also works well when you want to just be home and be cozy. Another element that might be making your kitchen look cheap is if you opted for those old stone look laminate countertops. Now I know replacing countertops for quartz or a more upscale granite may be expensive, but that is something that is so worth it and will significantly add to the value of your home. Now, say you're renting and you don't have the opportunity to replace these in your kitchen, that's okay. You can certainly look into a nice renter-friendly contact paper that has a marble look or quartz look, and that will really do a lot to elevate the look of the kitchen. A lot of the times, those old laminate countertops aren't really durable anyway, but they don't really do anything to add. If you are in the position to change these out and you want something that's more affordable, consider either painting them. They have some wonderful products on the market now where you can paint them to look like quartz or quartzite or marble, and they're super durable. If you're willing to spend a little more money than that, you could also opt for a nice butcher block countertop. Again, these can give a nice luxury feel. They're certainly timeless in a lot of designs, but they're also so cost effective and will stand the test of time in your home. Now, as a personal favorite, I would suggest highly for using like beautiful honed quartz or quartzite options to give it a lot of texture. I think that adding those elements to the kitchen, while it might be a little bit pricey, will do a lot to add to the overall appeal of your kitchen and make it look so much more luxury. Another mistake you might be making in your kitchen is not having a tile backsplash. So for example, you may have just drywall or only 4 inches of your countertop material along that back wall. And I would highly suggest putting a tile backsplash in. Again, if you're a renter, there are wonderful peel and stick options, which can really add to the look of the kitchen. But if you are a homeowner, I would recommend pulling out that 4-inch slab splash and putting a nice tile in. There are some good options to make it a little more DIY friendly, like large double-sided tape, but I do think the typical installation method is going to be best for making that tile look and feel amazing, as well as stand the test of time in such a high-use area. The last 2 items I have that might be cheapening your kitchen are a little bit more involved with other areas of your home. So the first would be having really cheap, chic vinyl flooring. I would strongly recommend replacing this for a luxury vinyl plank or an engineered hardwood in the kitchen, because if you have a flooring that looks really, really cheap and dated, it doesn't matter what you do with your cabinets, countertop, and backsplash, that kitchen is always going to look a little bit hodgepodge because the floor doesn't match. This also goes for if you've got really dated or really dirty floors. So if you've got tile where the grout is just caked and it's disastrous and old, you will want to look at replacing the floor, at least in the kitchen. And then my last one, this is just a little bit nitpicky here, but it's those cheap, ugly, plasticky outlet covers. So if you've got outlet covers that are visible, it is so inexpensive to make these look a little bit more designer by getting some that are a higher quality, perhaps some metal, perhaps something a little more ornate, just to give it a little oomph, make it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more tailored to your home. So those are my tips. If you have any, please drop them in the comments below. And of course, as always, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them and I might make a video response. Be sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.